Now, refugees and asylum seekers have been camping outside the Cape Town Central Police Station, opting to be arrested because they say they don't have anywhere to go. Now, frustration is mounting after the group refused the city's offer to transport them back to their previous places of residence. Scuffles also broke out on Sunday and Monday when law enforcement officers tried to stop the group from occupying open spaces in the Cape Town Central Business District. The group has been living in tents and makeshift structures on the pavement outside the UNHCR's offices since October last year, and they're demanding that South African authorities repatriate them to a country of their choice. The concern is, however, what will it take to resolve this ongoing stalemate? Also, can another African government or other African governments, plural, assist South Africa in resolving this matter? So joining us now here in our Joburg studio is His Excellency Mpoko, the Democratic Republic of Congo's ambassador to South Africa. And in our Durban studios is Professor Vivian Ojong, who is the acting dean of the School of Social Sciences at UKZN. Thanks to both of you for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having us.
So let's start here. This has been an ongoing situation in the Cape Town CBD. And of course, it's not an isolated incident. There are unhappiness, uncertainties in other parts of the country as well. But the Cape Town situation has, of course, come to the fore because of the UNHCR and people camping outside that office and what has subsequently transpired. But the question now is, what are other African countries doing to help South Africa resolve this crisis? And perhaps I can start with you, Your Excellency, as the ambassador of the DRC in South Africa. Do you know how many of your citizens are part of this particular group? And what are you doing to help the situation?
Thank you very much. This situation we've been dealing with for the last 2 years or so. A number of Congolese who have been camping in Pretoria and Cape Town have returned home. Some of them have found homes, have resettled in South Africa. Those who are still camping, you can see they have lost everything. They are in a very desperate situation. We as Africans, we should look at them with the essence of humanity and compassion. These people have lost everything. And when people find themselves in that kind of situation, you cannot always expect them to act rationally. Okay, so there's some irrational behavior because of the kind of situation they find themselves in. It takes a dialogue, it takes conviction, it takes patience. South Africa today is heading the African Union, so all eyes of the continent turn in South Africa to see what South Africa is doing, because they're here. I don't see any other African country coming to help South Africa. We got to find the solutions here. We have all the embassies, you have the UNHCR, you have the South African government, and so forth. We can find solutions. It takes patience, it takes commitment, and it takes compassion. We just need to enter into dialogue with these people. What's happening also, what's making things worse, is that there are some individuals who claim that if they behave the way they've been behaving, they will be transported, they will be sent to another country, a third country. I hear that Canada being mentioned many times. And I asked them, has anyone talked to the Canadian embassy to see if Canada is actually willing to take them there? That's not the case. Mr. Filippo Grandi, the High Commissioner of Refugee, came from Geneva last year. So we entered into dialogue with him to see what is it the High Commissioner of Refugee can do. They are limited in terms of what they can do. They can facilitate if the people are willing to go back home, or people want to, the South African government decide that these people should be resettled here, the High Commissioner of Refugee can help. But the High Commissioner of Refugee doesn't have the authority to impose those refugees into another country. That's one. Two, those who are coming from the DRC government had decided that they can return home if they are willing to do so. Therefore, we at the embassy, we can facilitate their return for those who would like to go back home. Because the situation at home, they are not persecuted in DRC. Nobody is pursuing them, nobody is after them. Therefore, with the security returning in Congo, my government has said they can return. So we have been facilitating those who are willing to return to go back home. We are Africans. Some of them have relatives here in South Africa, and some relatives are willing to take them in. Say, you can come, you can stay with us until we find a solution. But the problem is that those who are being manipulated, some people are trying to convince them, if you continue to behave the way you're behaving, somebody will take you to a third country. That's not the case. You see? So we just need to be patient, enter into dialogue, and find solutions.
So, Professor Ojong, looking at this situation and how it is playing out, it obviously places South Africa in a negative light to a great extent, especially given the xenophobic label that has been attached to the country. But what is your assessment of how the Cape Town situation in particular is being handled?
Thank you so much. Yes, the situation as it is at the moment, it places South Africa in a very negative state, especially based on the role that the world is expecting South Africa to play. I strongly believe that this is not a merely South African problem, and that all the African states need to come on board. We need a collective response to this problem, because if anyone has been assessing the problem from October last year, it is clear to us that the refugees are not willing to accept. They are not willing to accept the solutions that are being placed on the table. Now, South Africa and Africans are allowing the refugees to demonstrate and portray Africa in a very negative light, especially South Africa. For me, I wonder why other African states, like I'm speaking there, my colleague there, the ambassador, I'm happy he's on studio, why the ambassador, the various embassies are not responding. I've been following closely the correspondence on media. I've been reading, I've been keeping a close ear, and I've failed to hear any African voice, any African president coming on board to look for a collective response. How can we allow our Africans, our citizens, our nationals to suffer on the streets in the way in which they are at the moment? I think that real life, these are people who have real life. Their lives, we are playing with real life. How can Africa play a global role when locally we are not able to deal with issues like this that is affecting our continent? We cannot have a voice that will be recognized if we cannot solve little problems. I feel that this is a problem that if we have all the African nation states coming on board, it will be resolved. Based on the recommendations that are made, I believe that, like my colleague there on the other side, if we can go speak to our citizens, speak to the refugees, it is a real problem, and they will be able to listen. For those that are being used, those that are out there, I understand the frustration. And at the moment, it is being played as if it is xenophobia. I think anyone who has been following the situation will understand that. I think this is beyond xenophobia. It is an African crisis. We are dealing with an economy that is contracting globally and even around the continent. And you see, if we fail to handle this crisis at the moment, we're not going to be able to resolve the future problems that will emanate from this, because all economies in Africa are shrinking. We heard of the situation yesterday in South Africa where the economy is shrinking. And the issue of migration is not going to stop, because migration is a natural response, human response to the ability to access resources for a livelihood. And according to how human beings they inhabit an environment, if an environment fails to provide their need to sustain them, they will move out. If we look at our hunter-gathering societies, when an environment was not able to provide food, people kept on moving. And this movement is going to continue. So I hear what the South Africans are saying in the streets, in the informal sector. there's a perspective that the foreigners, the refugees, the asylum seekers are taking the jobs, and hence there's xenophobic behaviors. I do not believe that South Africans are xenophobic. I do not believe that. I believe that it is a genuine, natural human response to livelihood. And for the record, I would like to state that we should look at, instead of looking at the problem from a deficit perspective, where there are this struggle, there's a competition for survival on the street, because this group of people we are talking about are people who eke out a living in the informal sector, in the street, on the street there. And on the street there, you find the mass of the South African populace. They are based there. They are also struggling to eke out a living. I'm appealing to both the refugees, the asylum seekers, and the South African community, that I think looking for a solution, because if we don't find solutions amongst ourselves, I don't think anyone else can come from outside to look for solutions for us. We should be looking at ways of cooperating, partnering, collaborations, because these asylum seekers and refugees, they come along with them with some skills. And if you look at what happened, say, immediately after 1994, with the official demise of apartheid, you find that the foreign Africans who came with some technical skills, like you found those skills in hairdressing, you find them in dressmaking, the fashion industry, and so on. They were able to utilize those skills, and those skills, research has proven, those skills have been impacted and transferred to South Africans. I am calling for collaboration. I'm calling for partnership amongst South Africans and the asylum seekers. If you can go around South Africa, we're looking at the situation now in Cape Town. South Africans and foreign Africans have been coexisting. They are living in communities. They intermarry, they have families, they work together in the communities and on the street. What I feel that needs to happen is broad-based education. The South African government needs to have an intention to educate the public, to educate the masses that these foreigners, not all of them are coming to take jobs. That within them, let's look at the potentials that is among them. Let's isolate those potentials. Let's isolate those with specialized skills and see how we can harness them and bring people into partnership, into collaborative groups at the informal level, and see how we can grow the economy. Because you see, the thing is, with the job market shrinking, with the economy shrinking, we need these skills to develop as Africans.
Absolutely.
And I see we are calling for the African state, one African state. This is not going to happen if we don't learn how to collaborate, if we don't learn how to partner and coexist. I do not believe that even in the informal sector, foreign Africans and South Africans should be competing. They should coexist. They should be in partnership. The reason is that these foreign Africans,
please just hold on there, Professor Ojong.
Sophisticated, embedded, yes.
Please hold on. I want to bring the ambassador back in terms of the lack of voices from African leaders on this particular matter. And as the professor points out anecdotally, if you listen to what South Africans are saying as well, they feel that not enough is being said, not enough is being done by other governments across the African continent to help resolve this impasse. Do you believe that enough has been done? Do you believe enough has been said and a firm enough stance has been taken by other African countries and indeed their leaders?
No, enough has been said. We say it every day. We have different fora where we meet to find solutions. All those African states, they're represented here through their embassies. And we do meet with the government, with church leaders, with the UNHCR, UN agencies, and so forth. The meetings are ongoing. We meet at the DIRCO, the International Relations Ministry. We meet with the Home Affairs. The meetings are going on continuously. Maybe the professor is not aware of it.
But is the message being given to the people who need to hear it, which would be those people who are camping outside on the streets of Cape Town? Are you speaking directly to them to impart this message?
I even talked to them this morning. I talked to them last night. They have their representatives. We know them. I have visited Cape Town. I've been in Cape Town several times. During the mining in Durban, I was there, I talked to them. During Sona, I was there, I talked to them. This morning, before I came here, I woke them up. Two of the leaders, I talked to them. The dialogue is going on. We cannot be talking through them and through the media. you know. Because
But you're saying you're speaking to leaders, to representatives.
No, but you asked to talk.
And
I cannot.
you said earlier that you feel in some instances the people who are camping out there are being manipulated by these very leaders.
We're also talking to those people manipulate them. We know them. We know what's going on.
But are you speaking to the manipulated?
Yes. We're talking to all of them, ma'am.
And what are they saying?
Okay. They're all saying, some of them have returned home. Hundreds and hundreds of Congolese have gone back. But we had to process them because those who want to go back, there is a process. First of all, if somebody is an asylum seeker or is a refugee, he has to relinquish their status of refugee before he can be sent back to his country. Those are the international laws. So we had to follow those guidelines. So in my case, for instance, hundreds and hundreds of asylum seekers and refugees have returned since last year, especially those who were camping in Pretoria. They are no longer here. They have gone back. And we as ambassador, I talked to the ambassador of Eritrea, Nigeria, and so forth. We meet as ambassadors. We are finding solutions, but there is still remnants. Those are still in Cape Town, and we are talking to them. It takes patience. You see, when somebody has lost everything, you cannot just come overnight and say, give instructions and they'll march. They have lost everything. These are human beings.
So, in your view,
it takes a little bit of patience, a little bit of commitment, a little bit of compassion to solve the problem. And I'm sure we are finding solutions, but those who are still remaining in Cape Town, we're talking to them. And I think we are finding some solutions. The ones I talked to this morning, they said they have identified Congolese families that were willing to take them in. You see? So it's not a mass movement where you go to the media. You have to handle it case-by-case basis. In most cases, you have to handle it case-by-case. Each individual case is different.
So
okay? They are not animals where you think all of them, they belong to this category. Therefore, you imply the same solution to all of them. It doesn't work like that. You had to handle them case-by-case basis, and you have to be a little bit patient.
So as far as Congolese citizens are concerned from the Democratic Republic of Congo, you said that there is no persecution, that security has returned. So should there be any asylum seekers or refugees applying for that status in South Africa at this point?
No, I cannot tell somebody apply, do not apply. That's not up to me.
But it speaks to the conditions of the country from which they are coming from.
Yeah, but these refugees are new. No, not new. They've been here for a while. So what I'm saying is that before they can be returned back, they had to relinquish their status of a refugee. It's on a voluntary basis. You cannot force somebody to go back according to the international law. It's done on a voluntary basis. They had to be willing to go back. That's the law, okay? So we need to find, there are some guidelines that governing the refugee and asylum seekers. We cannot just come and force somebody to go back. He has to be willing to go back. It's on a voluntary basis, and you have to convince them. So what I'm saying is that their process is underway, but it's taking a bit longer than some of us would like to see. But I think we're making inroads. Forcing them, arresting them is not going to solve the problem. You cannot apply the force when people are desperate like this.
But law enforcement has to prevail, because at the moment, the situation in Cape Town is that there is a high court order that is being enforced. And unfortunately, the refugees are insisting that they want to be taken to a third country. South Africa's hands are tied. The United Nations, UNHCR, they've thrown their hands up in the air. Everybody's hands seem to be tied in this situation. So what needs to happen? How does this impasse get resolved?
UN, UNHCR, and so forth, they should not be throw their hands out. They should not give up. When people are suffering like that, you just don't give up. You find out the solution. You find out the means until you find the solution. You work on it. My sister here is saying you have to bring other African countries, but those countries are represented by the embassies. Those are the role of the embassies. That's why we're here. You cannot bring a president of Liberia, president of Nigeria to come here to solve the problem of South Africa. We are here.
So in the absence of a resolution to those problems, does it mean that the embassies themselves don't know what to do?
embassies, they are engaged. I know the ambassador of Nigeria, I know the ambassador of Somalia, the ambassador of Malawi. They are talking to their citizens. We're talking to them. We're not talking to them through media because it doesn't help.
Are they listening to you?
Some have listened and some have returned. But some are being manipulated, therefore they are sticking to their position. But
so what must be done in that instance? What should the South African government do?
Okay, South African government, what they can do is find areas where they can go temporarily to stay.
They don't want to go there. They've made it clear.
Some don't. A lot of them have.
Who has gone? Because as you say, the ones who were willing to do that have done so.
Correct.
Those who are still out there camping are sticking to their guns by your own admission as well. They're not willing to do that. So what should the South African government do?
As I said, I talked to some of the leaders of manipulating them, and I think they're beginning to listen. Believe me. Before I came to this studio, I talked to them again this morning.
The problem has been coming since October.
I know, but ma'am, it takes time to solve this kind of problem. This kind of human element, you cannot solve it overnight. It takes time. So let's invest the time, the effort, the resources, so that we can solve the problem. But if you want to solve it today, overnight, you can't.
Professor Ojong, we don't have much time. You're shaking your head. Let's get your final input on this.
You see, I think there has to be a political will on the part of the other African ambassadors, on the part of the other African countries. You see, because by the very nature of migration, there is a fear of return. I think the other African nation states need to really clearly make provision for the return of these people, because these are people, some of them have been here for 19 years, 15 years, 10 years. They have lost their livelihoods back in their home countries. So they cannot return to uncertainty. I think then the ambassadors, the nation said they need to make provision for the return of these people. What should they return to? There is a fear. There is a fear of disgrace. There is a fear of returning to nothingness. No. So what the ambassador is saying, if they are really committed to resolving the issue of the refugee crisis in South Africa, and they are clear that they want to make room for them to return, then they must put systems in place, create systems in place in their home countries for these people to return and be fully engaged in the economies of those countries.
Professor
On the
Ojong,
part of South Africa,
let me pause you there.
You see, we cannot...
Professor Ojong, the ambassador is disagreeing with you. I'm going to ask both of you to just hold on for 5 minutes after the news, and we'll come back, because the ambassador disagrees with you, saying that people have a fear of returning to nothingness in their countries of origin. So we'll come back to this after this news update at 8.